Hello, I'm Karmic Chaos, and today I will be reading Black Eyes Always Watch the Clock by silkybender, Chapter 2. This has a hurt Zuko, abusive relationship, and serious injury, so if you are sensitive to any of those things, please do not watch. If you need any other tags or any other information, please go to Chapter 1. It has all the tags and the summary, so please go back if you want any of that. Okay, let's get started. Don't you get the picture yet? When Zuko doesn't show up the next morning, Sokka assumes it's something he said. Granted, he has no idea what he's done wrong. He called Zuko a potential cat dad. Zuko, apparently, thought he wasn't. But Sokka managed to get himself into more serious trouble over things he said. Things he thought meant nothing at all. And this sort of situation is not new to him. He would give Zuko space, and then he'd apologize. And if he doesn't understand what he's apologizing for, well, it's the thought that counts. That evening, while Appa is FaceTiming and Aang is telling him what a good boy he is, Sokka lets his thoughts drift to impossible ways he can check on Zuko. Could he walk by casually and listen for sounds at the door? Could he knock and say he's noticed that no one has come to get their mail? Wasn't that weird, to act like he was monitoring their mail, even though he was? The next morning, Appa is snuffling at the grass, and then he sees Zuko, bundled up in an ugly cardigan, heading downstairs. Sokka has a feeling he doesn't know how to explain. It's barely a feeling at all, just a particular intensity of attention. Like Zuko walking downstairs is the most important thing in the world right now. Appa bounds over, sniffling at Zuko's slippers, whining. Hey, Sokka says, I was worried about you. Zuko smiles thinly. He looks off, somehow. You okay, buddy? I get migraines sometimes, he says slowly, like putting words together is hard. Sokka pauses for a moment to consider whether he should let Zuko lie to him. He decides not to call him on it. I thought you were mad at me, he says finally. Zuko covers his mouth, hiding a smile. What would I be mad about? I don't know, Sokka says, feeling like an idiot. You seemed upset after I said you'd be a good cat dad. Oh. Zuko nervously digs his keys out of his pocket and starts fumbling at the mailbox. And he's fumbling. It's like his fingers aren't working properly, and he can't get the key into the slot. It's the most mundane thing, and Sokka can't remember the last time he felt so scared. Zuko? Let me help you, Zuko says because he can't say, what is wrong with you? He takes the keys from Zuko's hands gently. His fingers are long and very cool, like he's been outside in the cold without gloves, and they open without resistance. And he unlocks the mailbox for him. Mail, he says uselessly, gesturing at the open door. I can see that, he says, but he isn't moving. Something's wrong. Something's very, very wrong. And it's making Sokka crazy, not being able to pinpoint what it is. It's making him feel like he has to cut the right wires before a bomb goes off. Except the bomb is Zuko going back upstairs again. Zuko pushes his hair behind his ear, nervously, and Sokka follows the gesture until he looks at Zuko's face. Zuko, who is always unkempt and unfussed with, is wearing makeup? It's pasty, slightly darker than the tone of his skin, and it trails across the right temple like a trail of falling stars. Your head. Zuko tilts his face, looking at him. You hurt your head, Sokka says. Then he rearranges it. Your head got hurt. His eyes are blazing. It's panic, Sokka thinks. Now that they're this close, he can see one eye is looking off, veering slightly in the wrong direction, and pupil blown. Sokka takes his hands without thinking. Zuko doesn't resist. Maybe less because he doesn't mind, and more because he can't figure out how. Sokka's hands are much bigger and stronger, escaping his. Let me get you to a clinic, he says. He can feel Zuko's fingers tremble. It's like what, 4:30 now? We can be there and back by 6 a.m. Zuko is shaking his head no. Doesn't work. He says sadly, you should see a doctor. He's still shaking his head. The thing is, Sokka says, you need to see one. Zuko doesn't look happy, but there's no fight left in him. He squints at Sokka and sighs. 9. Zuko says, this has to. It needs to be quiet. I can do 9. Sokka realizes he's still holding Zuko's hands. He drops them. Can you help with the... Zuko waves broadly at the mailboxes. Can you get it out of the... Oh, yeah, sorry. Sokka hands him the mail, closes the door, and wiggles the key out of the slot. Can I have your number? Should I text you? No. Zuko says quickly, I don't have a phone. You don't have a phone? Sokka repeats, okay, so we'll meet down here. Okay, he says, and then like he's talking to himself, I can do that. When they meet back up, it's the first time he's seen Zuko dressed like he's leaving the house. He's in soft pants and a t-shirt, swallowed up by a dark zip-up hoodie. The hood is pulled down over his face as he gets into the car. It's the first time, too, that Sokka can make out something of Zuko's shape. It's not that he's ogling him, it's more that he finds himself doing a quick scan, looking for injuries or something smaller than that. Tiny clues. He isn't pudgy, but he's soft all over, with curved hips and a slight belly. It's the softness of someone who never really leaves their room. After he buckles himself in, fumbling again, but he does it, he wraps his arms around himself, like he's trying to hide his body. It's already betrayed him once today. We're gonna go to the clinic on 4th and Pine, Sokka says, navigating out of the parking lot. Unless you have a preference. Zuko shakes his head. I've been there before. They turn right into Pine in rush hour traffic, and Sokka thinks, not for the first time, how lovely this city would be without anyone in it. You can see the mountains butting over the traffic lights, threads of snow sneaking down the peaks. There are pine trees everywhere, and it feels like home. Why 9? Sokka says. Zuko jumps a little. Sorry. No, I was just thinking. Zuko pulls his sleeves down over his hands. It's better when I get him out the door, he says, after I've helped with the things, the morning stuff. He's hunting for easy words, and Sokka is terrified. What's the morning stuff? Oh, just the making breakfast and cleaning up after the breakfast. This close, sitting side by side, Sokka can smell the cigarettes on him. Do you smoke? When I'm nervous. Zuko says frankly. He giggles, covering up his mouth. I do too. Sokka says, turning into 4th. I have to smoke outside, though. Zuko sighs. It's lonely. Cigarettes are lonely. Sokka agrees. I always think I'm over it, but sometimes it's the only thing that works. I think we're never over, Zuko says. Some things. Right. Sokka wonders what he's really talking about. When they park, Zuko looks surprised seeing Sokka getting out of the car. You're coming in? Yeah, he says. I'll be in the waiting room if you need anything. He pauses. I mean, if you want. Zuko's expression is blank. I think I do. The clinic always manages to look worse every time Sokka sees it. The waiting room is overcrowded, the receptionist is hurried, but never seems to be doing anything. And while there isn't a clock hanging on the wall, the stuttering of the fluorescent bulbs counts out the seconds. He thinks that's probably how they keep time in hell. Katara's a saint for working here. He knows that. She treats the homeless, teenage addicts, queer kids who ran away from their families and ended up in trouble, but he also worries sometimes if she works here just to prove that. Eventually, with huge relief, he sees Katara escorting Zuko back into the waiting room. Hey, sis. Katara looks at him. Zuko looks at him. And then at Katara. Then back at him. The color drained from Zuko's face, which is almost impressive considering how pale he was to begin with. Zuko says. Katara's face says he's fucked something up. Royally. Is that okay? I guess. Zuko says. Please excuse me for a moment, Lee. She pulls Sokka down the hallway by his ear and into an empty examination room. What are you doing? Katara hisses. I was saying hi. He's going to think we're collaborating. He's not wrong. Katara glares at him. I don't think you understand to the degree to which you have just fucked things up. This is a major breach of trust. Who knows if he's going to come back after this? To me or to you. Why wouldn't he come back? Because now he's going to think I sent you to check on him. And he's going to think that you were just pretending to be friendly with him so that you could do that. I didn't know that he'll jump to. He's an abused person, Sokka, she says fiercely. I don't know why I have to spell this out for you. These are people who are paranoid because it works. It saves their lives. There's absolutely no way he isn't going to think this is weird. It kinda is. He points out. Oh my god, I can't believe you. A nurse knocks on the door. Dr. Killick? All fine, Katara says warmly. I'll have the room cleared in a sec. To Sokka, she says in a low, angry voice. Well, just play dumb. I'll say I had no idea that you lived in the same building. You didn't, Sokka says. Until last. Katara opens the door. Out! Zuko is sitting on a chair in the waiting room, knees drawn to his chest. With his hood down, Sokka can see he took the time to wash and comb his hair this morning. It's longer than he thought. Still slightly damp, spilling halfway down his back. It's beautiful hair, really. Hey, Sokka says. Sorry about that. That covers a lot of ground. And he hopes Zuko won't try to figure out what exactly falls under it. Did they check you out? Zuko shakes his head, wincing a little, and touches his temple. I have to wait, he says hoarsely. CT scan. Oh. He sits down next to Zuko, swinging his legs nervously in the chair. How's your head? They don't know. They have to do the scan. I mean, how does it feel? Does it feel any better? Zuko isn't even looking at Sokka anymore. His eyes are closed. I'm tired. You ought to tell me what you tell yourself. Do you want a cigarette? Sokka asks when they're back in the car. He pulls a carton out of the console and offers it to Zuko, who looks at him skeptically. Your sister's a doctor. Frankly, Sokka says, cigarette between his teeth, I don't care what my doctor sister thinks. Zuko shakes a cigarette out of the carton and just holds it, turning it around in his fingers. They're still quivering, although not as badly as this morning. I thought you two were close. I don't know, Sokka says, flicking his lighter. He lights his cigarette, then Zuko's. Sometimes we are. I'm kinda mad at her today. Why? She yelled at me. Oh. Zuko says. He turns stiff again. The stiffness that's there and gone. She shouldn't do that. He says solemnly, like Sokka's relationship with his sister is the real problem today. Sokka shrugs. It seems like... Zuko says. Go on. It seems like she has a temper. I wouldn't argue with that. Sokka says. She doesn't go past that, though. Zuko tilts his head. She gets mad, but then nothing happens. It's fine. I just deal with it. I'm sorry you have to. He looks at Zuko, and Zuko doesn't look away. His eyes are sad and bright, brighter than the fire hanging off his lips. Can I ask you something? Sokka says. Okay. You can say no, I don't mind. It's hard to know when I don't know the question. Zuko says dryly. How about I ask you, and then you can say no if you don't like the question. He doesn't mean to make a big production of it, but he has, and Zuko looks exhausted. Just ask your question, he says, rubbing his forehead. Please. What did he do to you? Zuko sinks down in his seat. He still has that dazed look from this morning, which Sokka thinks is the concussion. Although he can't be sure, he came out of the CT scan looking stoic. More stoic than you'd expect for someone who had, say, a brain bleed. And they let him go home, which suggests that there wasn't one. But maybe it's worse than Sokka thinks. Maybe he just refuses to say. He called me a fat slut, and then he slammed my head against the in the kitchen, the counter. Zuko says, fingering his cigarette. The counter? Sokka repeats. He's done it before. Zuko says it like that makes it boring. Sokka takes his hand again, the way he had this morning, without thinking about it. I'm sorry, he says. So sorry. Zuko nods. No one deserves that. I do. Sokka doesn't know what to say. His chest is tight. He cracks down the windows a little more, like it's something more air in the car can fix. Then he stabs out his cigarette in the ashtray. He's done it before. Zuko says again. I heard a crack this time. I don't always hear a crack. Zuko. And then I woke up on the floor. He says, inhaling smoke. He smiles slightly. I know my face was going to be a mess. I knew that, but I couldn't control my hands, so I couldn't fix it. With the makeup, so I spent a lot of time lying down. That's what you're supposed to do, he says, turning to Sokka. You're supposed to rest. He says this seriously, like he's concerned about Sokka and wants to give him medical advice on concussions. Sokka reaches into the back seat for a water bottle. Aang got him a nice reusable one for his birthday, a clean canteen, but he keeps reusing an old water bottle of Pooland Springs, like the masochist he is. Here, he says. Zuko drinks shakily. When he hands it back, Sokka pours the rest onto a handful of napkins he keeps in his console. Come here, he says, and Zuko does. He leans in and closes his eyes. He presses the napkin very gently against Zuko's face, rubbing circles into his forehead, cheeks, and under his eyes. The concealer doesn't all come off, but most of it does. Zuko's right eye socket is one big bruise, black and ugly, a twin of the burn on the left side of his face. The burn curls around his eye and towards his ear, leaving black, tender darkness on his temples. It hurts to look at him. When Sokka finishes, he pulls back, just looking at Zuko. And Zuko is looking at the way Sokka is looking at him. When they get back to the apartment complex, Zuko puts his hair down and pulls his hood over his head. I trust you, Zuko says before he gets out of the car, meaning, don't tell. When he climbs up the stairs, no one would ever know what's happened underneath. When he goes to sleep, he dreams about Zuko. Nightmares where his face has been eroded away and there's nothing left but darkness. Dark as a bruise. Katara, 5:31 a.m. I'm sorry. Sokka, 6:08 a.m. I know. And that is the end of Black Eyes Always Watch the Clock, Chapter 2. I hope you come back for the next chapter. Bye!